Namaste, good evening, each one of you here. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being here with us today. We are very pleased to welcome you all who have been with us for a long time now, as long as those who are new to this vodka. Today is the 12th edition of Vodka Shots Hyderabad. I'm Anjani QA, and along with me, I have Sabyachi and Santan, who are the organizers of this event. They will introduce themselves.
Hi everyone. Good evening. My name is Vapasi. I'm working on ThoughtWorks for the last 8 months, and I'll be one of the organizers for this 12th edition of Vodka Shots. One welcome and over to Shantan.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Shantan. I am working as a senior consultant QA in ThoughtWorks. I had been in ThoughtWorks for 11 months. I have a total experience of 10.11 years. And I like to play cricket, badminton, and outdoor games. And I'm also organizing vodka with fellow folks. Over to you, Anjani. You can continue.
Thank you, Sabyachi and Santan. Now, let me reiterate what vodka is. It's actually a value-oriented discussion on quality analysis. It is aimed to offer a platform for testing community to come together and explore software testing. It is also for all the other roles who share and gain knowledge for best quality practices and new tech stacks. Originally, it used to happen in Hyderabad office, but due to COVID, we're having it on webinar. It happens every alternate month. Today, we have with us Brijendra, Sonal, and Prem as speakers. Yes, Brijendra, you can introduce yourself.
Thanks, Anjani. Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Brijendra Singh. I've been associated with ThoughtWorks close to 5 years, overall a decade of experience in QA industry, and I've been a speaker to multiple vodka events. And I'm keen to all QA related things. Like sometimes I coach, sometimes I guide, and also take the shift left approach to the quality practices and all. Yeah, that's me. Over to Sonal.
Thanks, Brijendra. Hello, everyone. My name is Sonal. I'm working as a quality analyst and joined ThoughtWorks through Vapasi Women Retaining Program. In all, total experience is 12 years, and I've played various roles in testing domain. It's just 7 to 8 months I joined ThoughtWorks, and it's been great learning for me. Over to you, Prem.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Prem. I joined ThoughtWorks a year back. I have a total experience of around 6 years now. I've been interested in QA practice and all, and I've been following vodka for a while, even before joining ThoughtWorks. I'm also interested in security domain. I've been part of the security community in ThoughtWorks and looking to gain more knowledge in security with respect to QA processes. Thank you for this opportunity. Over to you, Anjani.
Thank you, speakers, for your intros. We have two topics to be given presentation on. That is, one is accessibility testing mindset, and the other one is API security testing using Pynt. During the session, you can post your question in the chat. So let's get started with the session. Over to you, Brijendra and Sonal.
Thanks, Anjani. Hello, everyone. So I'll share the screen. Please let me know my screen is visible.
Yes.
Yes, it's visible.
I'll start the slide share. Okay, so I'm going to talk about accessibility testing mindset with Brijendra. To start with, let me ask you all a question. Like, what is accessibility in general? What comes into your mind when you hear the word accessibility? Anybody would like to say something about it? Okay, I'll take it as a no. So as an accessibility, when I hear about accessibility, I can think in a way like a product should be designed in a way so that any person should be able to use it. For example, entrance of a building, or a lift or elevator, which will help to increase or improve or remove all obstacles in usage of these products. So this is what I feel accessibility is when I heard first time the word accessibility. To give a general idea, general definition of accessibility, accessibility is a practice of making information, activities, or environment sensible, meaningful, usable for as many people as possible. In context with web accessibility, access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. The power of web is in its universality. This is a quote by Tim Berners-Lee from W3C Director. The web is fundamentally designed to work for all people, whatever their hardware, software, language, location, or ability. When the web meets this goal, it is accessible to people with diverse range of hearing, movement, sight, and cognitive ability. Now moving to the next question. How do we know that our website or app is accessible? Anybody would like to answer this question?
You can use the chat section or Q&A section.
Yeah, accessible, Vikesh is saying that accessible to each and every people. Yes, Vikesh, that's right. By asking folks with different abilities. Yes, Dilip. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. So there are some guidelines set by WCAG. Now the question is, what is WCAG? Web Content Accessibility Guideline 2.1. What is CAG? Anybody would like to answer this? So Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2, which is developed through the W3 process in cooperation with individuals and organizations around the world, with the goal of providing a single shared standard for web content accessibility that meets the needs of individuals, organizations, and governments internationally.
So maybe a pause in here. So
Sure.
we are using the word accessibility. We posed a question like, how would you know your website or product is accessible, right? And we cannot say that accessibility can mean different for me and different for some other people. Suppose I have a disability, suppose visual impairment. So my disability is different. And if somebody is, suppose they have some other issues, so for them, the disability or the accessibility would be a different aspect. So how would we say that our product is accessible enough or usable enough? So for that, we need to have some kind of guidelines, right? That is acknowledged and used by across the globe, and we can follow certain standards. And for those standards, this WCAG guidelines comes to picture. Okay. Yes, only you can take over. Sonal, you there? Am I audible?
Yes, Prachin, you are.
Okay. Until Sonal comes back, let me try to share my screen. Maybe I can take over. Give me a moment. Okay, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So for those standards, like how would we say our website is accessible enough? We follow certain guidelines, and that guidelines is provided by WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That is the version 2.0. And it provides all the information, like all the rules and things related to it. Anyone in here who already know what WCAG is? Have you heard this name earlier? Just yes, no, maybe in the chat. Okay. Yes. Okay. So if you are not familiar with WCAG, if you try to access the website looks very comprehensive. Like if you try to read through all these things, it might be a little bit confusing if you are a beginner into the accessibility. So that is what we'll try to explain a little bit of a structure of the WCAG guidelines so that you are able to follow it. Okay. So WCAG guidelines provide, they have actually the 4 principles from around they have built their all the guidelines. So 4 principles. So one is on perceivable, second is on operable, third is understandable and robust. And based on these principles, they have again divided their principles into 13 guidelines, like perceivable. So what perceivable means? So they have 4 guidelines under that, like there should be a text alternatives, there should be a time-based media, it should be adoptable, distinguishable. So I'm not going to detail, but I'm just trying to explain the structure in here. So there are 4 principles divided into multiple domain, and onto the domain, they have different guidelines. And under these guidelines, they have 78 different success criteria. So all these 13 guidelines will have 78 success criteria. And based on what level of accessibility you want to achieve, you can pick and choose the number of success criteria. So if you look at this particular slide, it says they have 3 levels of WCAG standards. So level A, level AA, level AAA. So what these standards mean? So level A means these are the pretty much basics stuff. Almost all these websites, knowingly or unknowingly, they follow these standards. So they are the pretty much basic standards. But in order to certify our product, website, application, if that is accessible, we need to at least follow AA standard of the WCAG guidelines. And if we are building a product for specifically for the disabled people, then it should be AAA compliant. So based on what level the team has decided or the product has decided, we may have to look at these different numbers of success criteria, and we may have to satisfy those success criteria in our product if we want to certify and or maybe publicized and promote our website as a inclusive website or usable website across globe. And based on our product, if it is an e-commerce product which depends on the user intervention, and if you do a research, you would find there is like significant amount of accessible people who actually contribute to the economy and the kind of product you are trying to buy and sell. So if you're into those kind of business, and if you look, there are certain percentage of these people's into your product line, then it's become very important and crucial for a product to include those people's so that you capture, you tap those opportunities. So it's become important. So based on the level that you have decided, now if you want to certify, okay, it's a basic kind of accessible website, then maybe you need to follow only 13 success criteria. But if you're saying you have to be compliant for AA standards, then there are 30 plus 20, 50 success criteria you have to follow. And if you're saying you're inclusive to all, even the disabled people can use your website, then you have to 78 success, like total 78 success criteria you have to follow, like 28 plus from the AA standards. Any confusion or doubt till here? I'll just take a pause for 30 seconds. Maybe you can form your question. You can take a note in a notepad if you have anything. Maybe at the end of the sessions, we'll answer your queries. Okay. But I'll give you a breather so that you can at least take down your questions so that you don't forget if we move along with the further slides. The topic can be a new for you. Okay. Now moving on. So now we understand what is WCAG guidelines. So if you hear anything about usability, so usability is a big umbrella, right? And one of the aspect is accessible. If you want to say your website or product is usable, then you have to also say it's accessible. And now you know, if you want to certify your application as accessible, then you have to follow certain guidelines. And those guidelines comes from WCAG guidelines. WCAG 2.1 to be precise, that is the latest one. There would be WCAG 2.2 coming, maybe mid of this year. They may add or delete something. Usually they add or maybe modify certain things, but mostly it would be the same. So if you are interested into this kind of stuff, maybe you can follow what comes into WCAG 2.2 as well. Cool. Now you also understood what are the different principles, guidelines, and success criteria, actually like in a little bit of brief, so that whenever you're following these documentation, you can actually understand. So you can see this is perceivable. So this is a principle. Under this perceivable, you have 1.1. So 1.1 is a guideline, and under this guideline, this is a success criteria. So 1.1 contains only one success criteria, but 1.2 contains actually how many? 9 different success criteria. So this is how you can actually, however, you can see what this text means. If you want to do a in-depth research, and you can also see what's the difference between 2.0, 2.1, and if any new things comes up, that is also you can look at into. Okay. Now you also understood what kind of success criteria you need to follow. Now, so the demo part was actually this one, like how actually WCAG looks and how you can navigate, what is the URL. So this is w3.org/tr. So maybe I can provide this in the chat. You can also go to this website and check how this WCAG things looks like. Okay, now I'll move on to, let's understand a few of these success criteria. So that you can relate. So the first thing, it says text alternatives, right? So perceivable 1.1 is text alternatives. So it says, suppose if somebody who cannot see properly, and if you provide a visual representation of some concept, so they won't be able to understand, right? Because they cannot see. But if you provide the alternate text, and if they can like hover it, you can see, or even the screen reader, if they turn on the screen reader, even it can also announce there is an image, and the image title is ThoughtWorks in discussion. So maybe that is how it helps folks to understand what kind of information you are providing. So whatever you are doing, whatever graphical representation you have, you can provide an alternate text. That is what this 1.1 means. If you want to read in detail, you can go into text alternatives, and in here you can see all the details, the success criteria, in which label it pertains to. So this is label A. So as I explained earlier, there are 3 kinds of label: label A, label AA, label AAA. So you might have seen most of the websites and apps, they by default provides this alternate text, right? So that is what I said earlier. Unknowingly, you might be following certain guidelines of WCAG, but there can be certain advanced accessible feature that you might not be providing. So there are something like this AA standard. There can be a AAA standards. So those kinds of stuff. Okay. Now moving on, our time-based media. Okay, so in here it's saying it should have closed caption, it should have audio description, it should have audio transcription also. For further details, I would encourage you to actually, so since I'm providing you some hints in here, you can actually check these guidelines, because I cannot cover all the 78 criteria in here. So the intent of this talk is to provide you the enabler content, and from there you can pick up the thing. Okay, now another is distinguishable. So by looking at this success criteria, okay, let's see what 1.4 says. So 1.4 says distinguish, make it easier for user to see and hear content, including separating foreground from background. So what it means is, so suppose if we have a website which is not using a proper contrast ratio. So you see this accessibility and you see this accessibility. So it can be difficult for you to understand there is something in here. And if there is any color things are here, I'll give you a demo as well. You will see, you will find difficulty to understand. So WCAG also provided some kind of contrast ratio between background, text, images, and what kind of objects you display into your website. And they say you have to maintain at least this kind of ratio if you are on headers or text, or you have to maintain some other kind of ratio if you're into image or something. So there are certain proper guidelines. And we'll see the demo as well, like how you can actually check this contrast ratio. So right now you might be wondering, okay, how would I actually say if it meets the 4.5 contrast ratio, how can I cannot actually provide this quantify this number like it is 4.2 or 4.3. So there are certain tools. I'll tell you like what those tools are. Now another, if we take an example of 2.1, 2.1. So keyboard accessible. So what it says, make all functionality available from keyboard. So suppose if I'm a person who don't use a mouse, so you want me to include as well, right? Most of the developers or the tech persons or whoever has maybe they are not used to mouse, they would prefer to use keyboards, and they would expect like they would be faster if you provide a keyboard accessibility. But if your website doesn't provide it, then they will feel annoyed or maybe not using our product, right? So this is what this particular thing says, like your product should be keyboard accessible. Now again, this falls under single A, like A standard. So it might be very obvious for you, but I'm just trying to relate certain guidelines to you so that you understand these falls under the accessibility guidelines, WCAG guidelines, and this is how actually you can check and relate. Navigable. Now what this means, 2.4. So it says provide ways to help users navigate, find content, and determine where they are. Suppose if I'm into a website, if I take an example of okay, this website, and right now, suppose if I go to about, and I navigate and I find and after some point of time, I might be lost. Okay, where actually I am, if they have not provided this particular highlight to me, like where exactly I'm into. Right? And if they don't provide me a way to navigate to the website. So this is also comes into accessibility. Let's see which standard it is into. Again, this is into A standard. Now input modalities. Okay, let's come to 2.5. So it says, make it easier for users to operate functionally through various inputs beyond keyboard. So now we talked about, okay, so it should be keyboard accessible. So you should not only be focusing on keyboards. There are multiple ways where you can interact with your product, right? So it can be mouse, it can be your audio as well. It can be a facial recognition or maybe whatnot based on a feature and all. So you have to think about it, like what kind of product you are building and how your users will be using that particular product. So if you can think about if speaking to a system would be easier, like if you're searching a product or if you're doing whatever operations you are doing, if you think a speech can be a better way, so maybe you can try including that as well, so that the people who cannot type, who cannot use mouse, they can actually use their voice. So you need to provide multiple ways. That is what I'm trying to say, based on the need. Okay, now these were the common, like most common, most basic guidelines that we actually unknowingly use in our applications. But I put those examples in here so that you can relate to what accessibility guidelines are. Now, let's see what are the most common accessibility issues that we usually face into our product. Okay, you might not be even aware of it, but actually, if you are a user of any particular product, you might have been annoyed by those issues. So one thing is low contrast on text. Sometimes it becomes harder to recognize a text or something because it's maybe overlapped with some kind of images or background is not properly visible. So it's annoying. It doesn't look like a usable product, right? Missing alternate text. So as I already highlighted, missing link text, ambiguous link text, too many navigations link. So if I provide a page where there are too many navigation links, like you might be confused, where should I go? It's not a usable, right? Empty form labels and unclear form control. So you might see an abandoned form and there is no instruction. Like suppose if you have to put some information, they are not telling you, like either if it is a first name, you have to put a full name. Where should you put your middle name? Or like, is it a phone number? Should I enter a country code or not country code? So many things, right? So user would expect some kinds of instruction, and you have to provide those instruction in a way that those forms, those product looks usable. So you have to think from that perspective, right? So let's see how these very pretty much common stuff, these would fall under an A standard. You are not missing out. So even though you haven't discussed accessibility with your product owners, and if they are not catering any particular accessibility, but still as a QA, as a quality person, you can actually, there are certain tips and tricks that you can follow and make your product more usable to the product. Okay, so let's see what those are. So how you can actually do it. So use only keyboard, right? So if you want to check, so whichever application you're using, so how you can check, either you can use your tab key in a product and see how it's being navigated or not. If you're not very fond to it, if you're not able to understand, but if you're very particular, like which object you want to check. So suppose if you want to check if this particular sign up for Facebook, if this particular link can be navigable. So in Chrome DevTools, if you hover, if you do inspect element, then you would be able to find if this keyboard is focusable or not. How can I check it? Okay, so if I do this, inspect, and from here, if I do this, you see, I see an option, keyboard focusable. So there is an accessibility tab is coming, if you can just see in here. So this is a quick way to check if your links, your things are if you can navigate back a keyboard or not. Okay. Second thing is screen reader. So all the modern browser provide a screen reader for you. So you can also check if a screen reader can read out your page in a logical order, so that people can understand. So if I take a very basic example, which one should I take? I don't know. I'm just using, let's GitHub, edit, speak. Let's see what it says.
Skip to content pull request S issues code spaces marketplace explore ThoughtWorks vodka public fort from ThoughtWorks vodka edit pins watch 0419 for your own copy of ThoughtWorks.
Were you able to hear?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah. So you saw so this browser has a capability to read out things, right? So now suppose if I'm a lazy person, or if I cannot see properly, if I'm in a maybe outdoor situation where the sunlight is more, and if I want to just read out the if I don't want to interact with the page, but I'm just reading some information. So instead of reading, I just want to hear it. And if you have that kind of use case in a product, maybe you can just check if you can read out, if your screen reader can read out things in a logical order. So if there is certain things like suppose TWQA Pune, then it should read out this thing first, then it should go to these options, and then it should read out the things below. It should not be like first you are saying that there is environment one available in GitHub pages, and then it goes to about, and then it goes to its TWQA page. And it may happen based on how you have structured your web page. I'll show you again, maybe in the upcoming demo, but this is a feature that you can use. Okay, moving forward. And at any given point of time, if you have any question, just take a notepad and write it down. At the end of the session, I'll open a Q&A, and whatever doubt you have, we'll try to answer, okay? Sufficient contrast. Now, again, how you can quickly check if your application has a sufficient contrast, your elements have sufficient contrast. Again, very pretty much basic things without any given tool. You just go to whichever website you want to go. Okay, let me go to DQ Labs. Okay. And if I come here, so you see, if you can just, if I try to change the mouse position, it will remove this pop-up. But if you are able to see, under accessibility, there is a contrast section, and it says A and 2.83, and there is a yellow exclamation mark. And it's saying this particular contrast is below standard, below 4.5. And if you look at this page, even you might find it very annoying. Like it's not easier to see, and it's not pleasing to eyes, right? So this is what it's trying to say. Like this contrast is not proper. And if you look at, this is way below 1.87. This is 4.31. This is just below 4.5, the basic standard. And this one is 8.83. So you can see this is like fairly visible, and you can comfortably see it. So that is why it had a higher contrast of 8.83. So these are the quick ways of checking if you're following a proper contrast ratio or not. There are certain automated ways as well, but I'm just trying to tell you some manual ways first, then we'll see how automatically you can check these features as well. Now, page structures. So if you take an example of this, so as I told earlier, if you are using a screen reader, and if you're not following a proper page structure, then screen reader will jump in between and it will not follow the proper structure, and whoever hearing the page will not understand anything because it's not following a proper logical structure. So this is what this particular thing is saying. So you can quickly check if you are following a proper page structure there. If you're following up any header hierarchy, then it should be proper, like H1 to H6 and in a proper order. And it should have area labels, interactive elements, separate structure. So if you see this page, so this is enabled with a proper CSS. There is HTML, and this HTML is updated with proper CSS. But if I remove the CSS, I have disabled the CSS in this page. And again, if you have followed the proper structure, then again, without even CSS or design, your page would make sense. So if you see this particular page, so there are some step 1, 2, 3, and there was certain form, and at the end there was a continue button, and there was a note. And if you look at this particular post removing the CSS, you would see there is a stepper. First section is stepper, then there is a form, then there is a continue button, and then post that there is a note. So even if you remove the CSS, your page structure looks fine, then you're confident. Okay, so whatever comes next, whatever new element you add, the page is following a proper structure, right? So this is a quick way. And which plugin is this? I'll tell you. Like which plugin actually you can disable all the CSS now. Okay, now you can use various tools. So there were certain manual steps that I told you. Now there are certain tools also that you can follow. Those tools are, first is Lighthouse. How many, just quick poll, like how many you have heard Lighthouse? Yes, no? Okay, a lot of people already know about Lighthouse. Did you knew like Lighthouse contains the accessibility feature as well? You can take a feedback from Lighthouse if your website is accessible or not. Good. So there is Lighthouse and there is alternative that is Xcore dev tools coming from Xcore. So this is also you can use for an automated way, like you can quickly run a scan on accessibility on a page and it will provide you all these feedbacks like what your page needs based on the best practices and based on certain WCAG guidelines. So what it's saying, if you look at this particular feedback, it's saying, so it has 20 issues. And it's saying one review can be reviewed because it's coming from a WCAG guideline. It's saying best practices 9. So 9 best practices you can follow. And it's saying one is critical. Why one is critical? Because that is coming from a WCAG guideline and others are coming from best practices. So there are various best practices. There are other guidelines as well apart from WCAG. But WCAG is the official one. So it's saying you can so you can see all these feedbacks coming in and you can check. And okay, so maybe I'll give you a demo as well, how to use Lighthouse, Xcore, those things. And so these are the automated way, but still these are manual, right? You have to manually open a website and then you have to run a scanner on the particular page and then you will get the feedback and you have to note down the feedback. Now there is some automated ways as well. And like if you want to automate your accessibility, then where in your test pyramid, where actually you can do it. So there are 3 steps in a test pyramid. So you have unit test. While you are writing a code, so there are various linters. So linters can tell you, okay, boss, while you are writing a code, you have missed these particular sections. Why can't you add this? So most of the folks who are working closely with developers, you might already be aware of linters are certain code guidelines that they provide, right? And if you add some accessibility linters, then it will provide you those feedbacks. Then there are unit tests. You can write, if you heard of Jest, so Jest has a collaboration with accessibility, and you can actually write accessibility specific unit tests. You can collaborate with your developers, and they can provide you first-hand feedback from there. And the last layer is E2E. From the E2E, so whichever website you are running your end-to-end test, over there as well, you can run accessibility checks, and you can get a feedback. And then based on the manual review, you can think of like which one you want to fix, which one you want to not fix, and which one you want to skip. Okay, cool. If I give you an example of perspective of the pipeline, so suppose if you have pipeline, you have various environments. So the first step is where you are running your unit test, you're running your security checks, like a static code security checks and all. Then you have a dev environment, you deploy your dev environment. And then you run your end-to-end test, you run your performance test, suppose you have performance test, then you have another environment, test environment. And then, so what this pipeline says, it's not saying you should have accessible test post your test environment, but this depicts you can add a block of accessibility tests somewhere in a pipeline, wherever, based on your project and based on the need you have. And based on that, you can promote your build to the next step. So if you are sensitive to the accessibility, you can say if your end-to-end test provides any feedback on accessibility, you will not go to a next deployment, next environment deployment. So suppose if this block was in dev environment, if in dev environment it have provided you any feedback on accessibility, you would have not deployed into the test environment. Cool. In this scenario, it's saying you are into test environment. If until test environment, if it has an accessibility issues, then it will not go to a UAT environment. There are certain from the Azure DevOps pipeline board, you can see how the logs are looking like in a CI manner. Okay, now let's see a quick demo. So demo would be on. Okay, before even I do that, let's see accessibility tool. So Xscore. So this DQ Labs Xscore is the best thing for your automation. And if you look at the documentation, you can actually read out. I'll provide this link in the chat for a reference. And you can check. They are saying list of projects using Xscore. And this is that page. And in this thing, you can see this Xscore has integration with WebDriver.js, WebDriver.io, Playwright, Puppeteer, Selenium, Cucumber, Selenium, so whatnot. Whatever end-to-end test you use, you can integrate your accessibility checks into your pipeline, into your end-to-end test. So I'll just quickly show you. So this is with Playwright with Xscore. I'll show you the package.json, and it's using Playwright, and it has Xscore Playwright plugin. And if I quickly show you the test, and in this test, it says navigate to this website, this particular page, and in here, run analyze this page, and whatever it provides you feedback, just log this thing. It's a very basic setup, but whatever you want to, even you can provide an assert, you can do most of the things in here. This is just a basic setup so that it helps you to relate. It's achievable. The accessibility part can be tested by automation as well. So if I quickly run this one, so it says npm run test. So npm run test head. So it's open a website. It will run a check. It's done. And you can see it has provided all these feedbacks. And there are ways you can manage these feedbacks with proper report and all, but I'm not covering those things because of time limitation. Quickly, I'll show with Cypress as well. So if I go to test, and in this example, it's saying you have to navigate. So in this test, you can write all your end-to-end with Cypress, all the functionality, and whichever page you want to analyze the accessibility, you can inject your X in there, and you can check the accessibility. Okay, now let me run this test. It says npm run headed. So it has opened a Cypress demo website, and now it's running an accessibility check. And now in Cypress developer bar, you can see all these feedbacks coming, and these feedbacks you would be able to see in console as well. See, it's saying some of these critical, moderate, these kind of things are coming and it's failing. And this is how you can actually look at, like, ensure every form element has a label. So there was not a label. Ensure the document has a main landmark. So main landmark was missing. Ensure all pages content is contained by landmark. So all these things, and it's also saying it's a critical, moderate, and this is also configurable, but I'll not cover those things. You can actually look at the documentation. If you look at the Cypress Xcode documentation, I'll provide this link as well. I'll provide what else I can provide. Okay. And in here, you can see how you can actually configure things, how you can add, remove, delete various checks and all. Cool. Now I'll move on. So now we talked a lot about accessibility, but accessibility is just not limited to QA. It should be your tech team responsibility, and apart from tech team, the complete delivery team responsibility. So when we say accessibility, it's not about like we need to have an accessibility expert in our team. We are not looking for a role. There should be accessibility expert role. We need to hire somebody and who can look at these things. So it's a capability, and anybody can build this capability. Whoever is doing whatever their amount of work in their scope, they can check in which capacity they can inclusive be of this accessibility. Suppose if somebody is doing a user research before even coming with all those users flow and diagram, they can run our disability user research and they can find out, okay, what kind of things they need to consider in their design. And while people are building a design components like design library and all, they can also check if those things are compliant to the accessibility. Whoever writing the HTML and CSS, they can also check if they have provided all these proper things or not. They can use a proper linter and not. Whoever is doing the testing, they know how they can overlap with other players they are working along, and how they can run these manual, automated, and sanity checks around it. They can do automated testing, they can do a manual testing and all. And one caution in here, accessibility is best tested manually, because it's a kind of usability. It's a human factor, right? A tool can suggest you maybe based on certain factors, they can tell you there is a feedback, but that feedback may not be applicable. So human intervention is always required in terms of you need to take a proper judgment if your product is usable or not. What I'm trying to say is, you cannot just say by doing automated testing your product is accessible. You need to do some kind of manual testing as well. Now, you heard a lot of things about accessibility today. So what you can do starting from today, like post this session, what you can actually do. So you can start with using the Lighthouse Chrome plugin. You can do a Xcode DevTools plugin, and you can use this Chrome what we call it, inspect element kind of thing. And this will provide you a quick feedbacks on whichever product you are working, and you would be able to find like where you are missing on and how the accessibility plays a critical role. Let's see a quick demo. Quick check on time. How much time do I have?
Bridge, you have 8 minutes to wrap it up, and including the Q&A sessions.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's see. Do I have anything? Okay, so I have already installed a few things. So if I go to inspect element, and I have already installed Lighthouse. and X DevTools. So if you want a link, I can provide you those links as well. So you can do Lighthouse Chrome plugin. And this is what you can install. I'll provide you a link. And similarly, for Xcode Chrome plugin. You might be wondering, this is a Brave browser and how come I'm doing a Chrome plugin on those things. So Brave is a Chromium based browser and it supports the same marketplace. So this particular tool, I'm providing a link in the chat. Okay, now coming to the business. So suppose this is a website that you want to investigate. If this is compliant to accessibility, then you go to inspect element, post installation of those plugins. Then you would see Lighthouse and DevTools coming. You go to Lighthouse and then you can, so by default, it would be checked all these things. If you are already using Lighthouse for performance, then you might have seen this checkbox and you might not be aware of it actually, like what it does. So you can remove all these things. Let's enable accessibility and best practices and do it on the desktop and analyze the page. It will take maybe 30 seconds. And we'll check if it provides certain feedbacks, how it provides the feedback. So it's saying it's on 67% and on accessibility, and the good range is 90 to 100. So this score is 67%, and it is providing you certain categories like where you are missing on things. So it's saying on name, on labels, you have 4 feedbacks. On area, you have 1 feedback. On contrast, you have this feedback, navigation, and so on. And you can click on it. You can see where exactly this is saying the issue is. And you can, I'm not saying blindly trust these things. See if it is applicable for a product. If you still find these things not usable, then you collect this feedback, provide it to your developer, your product manager, product owners, and from there you start the discussion. So this is Lighthouse. Now run a test using DevTools. So if you are on Xcode DevTools, scan all pages. And it's saying it has 8 critical issues based on WCAG 2.0, 2.1 AA standards, and it has serious 12 issues and total, and it has minor 10 issues. Now you can like navigate to these issues and you can check like which one is applicable to you, which one is not. So if I click on this one, you can see this is only one issue is there based on the button must have discernible text. And then suppose if you go to ID attributes, value must be unique. So certain elements does not have a like common ID. So this also says control panel. This also says control panel. And there might be certain other elements as well. If I do next, so this also say, okay. So maybe you need to analyze like what it says, and based on that, you take a feedback. Okay. So one is Lighthouse, second is Xcode DevTools, and third is your inspect element. So you use this Chrome thing, and under accessibility section, you can check if the contrast is right, if the keyword focusable is there or not. Those kind of stuff you can check. Okay. Now coming to the shift left part. Okay. So whatever we do as a QA, we always say we need to shift left, right? If we find out these issues later in the game, then it would be very difficult to maybe make a change. It would be costly. It would be take time, and it will trouble you because you have to do a multiple retest. So what you can do is you can think of how you can shift left these concepts of accessibility and put it earlier in the game, right from the research. So if you are a part of the team who is forming up and is starting a development on the project. So maybe at that point of time you can push it and say, ask these questions. If this usability is a concern in here, do you want your product to be accessible? You can do a user research wherein you can find what kind of users from which geography, what kind of disability, accessibility they would be using it, and based on that you can form those success criteria, and from there you can start. So it would be research. From there the stories would flow with those accessibility guidelines, and then while you are building various designs, your wireframes, your designs, the developers, how they are writing the code, they would also include the accessibility part, and then as a team you will verify and check, and then you will certify if it is not if it working or not. So I'm saying, instead of everything is done blindly and then at the end you run these tools automation and you say, boss, there are 30 feedbacks, now you fix it, it's not a good practice. You should do it earlier in the game. And how you can do it, so maybe if you have like agreed like you are going to follow accessibility as a cross-functional requirement in a product, then maybe you can include accessibility criteria in detail, what exactly you are meaning in the story. So I have seen in as a bad practices where people are saying this story should be accessible, one liner, and doesn't say like what accessibility criteria you're trying to consider. Like a story can be based on the form, and a form cannot relate all 78 success criteria, right? You cannot just blindly check all the 78 success criteria on that form. So form can be like maybe 3 different success criteria. So if you are aware of what kind of accessibility you are going to target on that particular form, you can explicitly write like that should be focusable with keyboard. This should be indicate when there is a keyword focus. So in detail, you can write like you write for your business use case, the success criteria, right?
Yeah, Brij, we have one question lined up in the Q&A sessions.
Okay.
Okay, so the question is from Vikas Kumar. For X dev tool, can we sign in using our ThoughtWorks email ID?
If you are using, so I would say you ask this question with your product team, with whoever you are working, and based on that you can sign up. What I'm using, I actually didn't sign up for ThoughtWorks ID. I'm using a non-signed up version, because for initial running a check, I don't need to sign up. But if you are still interested to sign up, then I would say ask your team.
Okay, so because that's answered your question, I think. So
okay, with that actually I wrapped up my session. So now I'll open a Q&A. If you have any questions, yeah, maybe you can type in.
Even if the host have any question, they can ask. Okay, like I have one question from the wide perspective of the accessibility testing mindset. Like as you said, there's so many like 70 categories of accessibility testing is there. So what do you think is like the most important that while building any product, we have to pick at least this basic accessibility testing mindset so that it can be accessible to all different kinds of people? So do you have any top set, like top 5, top 10, like these has to be implemented all the time? Or is it just dependent on the application that we're building?
Okay, so there are 2 use cases. First is you have certain kind of agreement earlier, like your website should be accessible. There is SLA, there is an expectation from the product team. And if they have agreed to follow a AA standard, then you have to follow those 55 success criteria based on the level that you have. So if I go back, in here, so if you have this NFR, non-functional testing requirement, or cross-functional testing requirement, where you say you have to follow AA standard, then all these 50 success criteria you have to be cognizant of. then only you can say or certify your website is accessible. Okay, but suppose you don't have that SLA, but still you want to make your website accessible enough, then at least you can check these A standard 30 success criteria, and these success criteria will actually be rotating around all these 5 points that I have given a demo. Like it should have a proper contrast ratio, it should have a screen reader properly, there should be a proper structure, it should not be having any missing link, there should not be too many navigation links. So these points will cater most of these common issues of the accessibilities.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question from MK. Any accessibility tool for dyslexia users?
Dyslexia user. Actually, I don't know what dyslexia means, but based on the symptoms of that user, suppose if that, okay, can you type what symptoms of the of the dyslexia, like what that person cannot do, like cannot see or cannot use hand or cannot. So based on that, I can suggest.
It's a reading problem actually. Dyslexia. It's a problem with letter something.
Okay. Okay. If they have a problem with letter, it means they cannot actually read. So if they cannot read, then what is another way of getting the information? So it should be hearing kind of thing, right? So if you are, so suppose if you are building a e-commerce product where they want to, or if you are a Wikipedia, you are providing some information, and if a person with this particular symptoms, if they are trying to access, then they cannot see visually, then you have to provide another way of communication, and that is a hearing kind of thing, right? So it should be a speech, a screen reader kind of thing. So if you turn on the screen reader, your website should be able to read it.
I guess that answered the question of MK. Thank you, Bridget and Sonal. That was a very informative session, and I guess we have to implement accessibility testing while building an application, because finally it is the end user who should make it very easy to use. So thank you for this session. It was very informative. I hope this testing, it will be used while building any product by all of us. Thank you. And now, folks, we'll be taking a break of 3 minutes, and then we'll be back.
Thanks, Anjani. And meanwhile, if you have any questions related to accessibility, please do post it. I'll be here for another maybe 15 minutes, and then we'll try to answer.
Hey, hi everyone. Welcome back from the break. So, hope you enjoyed the first session presented by the Brijendra and Sonal, the A11Y testing mindset. And we'll be starting with the next session on something different zone. It's on about the maintaining security on API level. And we have our second speaker, Prem Sundarraj from ThoughtWorks, and he will be presenting on the second topic on API security using Pynt. So, over to you, Prem.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Just a minute. Hi everyone, welcome back. So I'll be presenting the topic on API security testing using Pynt with Postman. So we'll get started. So this is the agenda for today. We'll start from why API testing is, API security testing is important, and we will go ahead on OWASP and how to shift left for security, and how to set up and use Pynt actually. So go to the next slide. So we arrive on the topic why API security is important. In the recent past, more and more applications have been moving to microservice architecture from the traditional monolith. So when you move to microservice architecture, there are a more number of APIs being written every day. So according to some statistics and reports, there are around 33% more APIs built each day than the previous year. So number of APIs are getting larger. And we need to ensure that all these APIs which are being developed or secured in a way, even though if they're not exposed to the outside world and they're just within the network, basic level of security is important for all APIs. And the second thing is like APIs expose business logic. So say in an organization or an application, there are 5 microservices, and let's say there is a user service, a company service. So these services have some basic CRUD operations. So when you look at it with your naked eye, you can even see what is the business logic behind it. So it's easy to understand what's going on, and it will be easy for whoever a hacker or whoever it is to break into these APIs. So they expose business logic. So it is very important to have a well-versed security testing in place for them. And third thing is like this is a reasonably important, and everyone knows about it. So APIs, they expose personal and sensitive data. Through them, we actually expose the data layer, or we actually access the data layer using APIs in all our applications using microservices. So when you have access, when you gain access to an API, it means that you have access to all the data. If the proper authentication and authorization not in place and proper security is not in place for API, so that is one of the main important thing to consider. The last one is the cost for remediation and compensation is high. So when you talk about remediation, like if an API is being compensated, or if the API is vulnerable and a threat is being found, then the cost for fixing it and redeploying the API in the production is very high. And as well as if the threat level is very high, then you have to bring down the API, and this will again increase your cost per day. So your application, part of your application will be down, and this will impact the organization very much. So these are a few points why API security is very important, and we should have a basic level of security testing in place for all these APIs. So does anyone have any questions regarding this? Can we move ahead? So if you have any questions, please let me know in chat. I can look it up. So since this is a short session, I will be moving along. So next, I want to touch base on what is OWASP. So I guess a lot of you here would know what OWASP is and heard about OWASP. So OWASP is nothing but an organization or a foundation. It's a non-profit organization that works on improving the security of the software. So it's an online community run by a set of volunteers, which produces documentations and articles and reports on the latest security threats and how to mitigate them. So that is OWASP. So it has no employees. If you look up Wikipedia, it has 0 employees, but it has around 16,000 volunteers for OWASP. So it is an online community basically, and you can even contribute to OWASP in whatever way you can, but you need to be part of the community, and you can contribute to OWASP. So that is OWASP. So many security tools and many security testing organizations or service providers, they consider OWASP as a guideline, and they usually test for all the OWASP vulnerabilities, reported vulnerabilities. So now let's talk about OWASP top 10. So this is one of the important reports or documents published by OWASP. So it's published every 2 to 3 years based on the increase in vulnerabilities. So it is a list of top 10 vulnerabilities that has been affecting the web applications and cybersecurity in the that current year or for the past 2-3 years. So this report gives an idea of what are the threats that are being taking place in the outside world with respect to other organizations, and what are the threats that should be considered by the current organization, and kind of build the system or build a security around it. So the report is published every 2 to 3 years, and some of the threats they'll be removed from the report, and some of them will be moved top of the order. So as you can see, the last report was published in 2021 by OWASP, and in 2017, before that it was published in 2017. As you see, there are some differences to the report. Some new threats or vulnerabilities have been added to the report, and some of them have been moved up the order, and some of them have been removed from the report. So if something is removed, it's not like it's not a vulnerability anymore, but it's the priority or the occurrence of this vulnerability in the current 2-3 years have been is more or less. So that's why it has been removed. So if you see, like maybe in the past 10 years, SQL injection or injection in any form has been one of the major vulnerabilities. If you can look at all the data and if you look at all the reports, you could see it. So SQL injection is one of the primary vulnerabilities in the system right now. So I will be moving ahead to the next slide. So next, let's talk about shift left for security. So everyone, nowadays we are using shift left in all our QA processes and QA culture as a whole. Like in the previous session, we talked about accessibility, shift left for accessibility. But right now, security shift left is not given much priority, and I think it should be given more priority right now. So what is shift left of security is basically trying to have this security testing process, or enabling more security around your product in early part of the development process, so that it can be found much earlier and fixed at the earliest possible. So that is shift left for security. So you want to if you look at this diagram, you want to traditionally what happens with security testing is when everything is deployed in staging or in production, then security testing service provider is being invited, or any security testing tool is being used to run the scan against a production or staging environment, and then the report is generated and the team has to work on it. So when you find bugs, not only for security, for any QA process, if you find bugs at the later stage of your development cycle, then it's always the cost is going to increase. So that's what we talked about in the previous session as well. So likewise for security as well, if you find any bugs or issues in the later part of your development process, it's going to cost more. So you want to shift the app security or security testing to the front of your process, left of your process. So it should be when the developers build the code and testers start testing. I think security should come at that point itself. So that's the basic idea of shift left. So let's talk about SAST and DAST. So SAST and DAST are two types of security testing process or methodologies that are in place. So STAT stands for Static Application Security Testing, which analyzes the program's source code to find vulnerability. So I think most of you would be aware of SAST already. It is being used more widely than DAST. So one of the common examples is Sonar Cube or Sonar Quality Gate Check. So everyone should have these in your pipeline. So it analyzes your code and tries to find if there are any vulnerabilities from the code level. And when opposing to it, DAS is like dynamic scan, which in, when the application is hosted to an environment, it runs the scan against the application and tries to find the vulnerabilities from the application's network calls and integrations with the different services and all. So when we talk about shift left in security, there are two options to either go with SaaS and DAS, but I think more predominantly SaaS is being employed right now, but DAS is not considered when we talk about shift left. But the real thing is you need both of them in your pipelines or in your shift left approach to have a more secured application. So that's where Pynt comes in. So Pynt is a lightweight API security testing tool, which enables developers as well as testers run security testing and find vulnerabilities throughout the development cycle. So it can be easily integrated with tools like Postman or even your GitHub pipeline to run security testing, API security testing in very early stage of your development life cycle. So let's look how we can run with Postman. So everyone right now, we might have a Swagger endpoint, but every API, we used to create a Postman collection. So if you have a Postman collection for your functional test already in place, then it makes your work very easy for running Pynt. So you just have to fork the Pynt collection from their official website. And you have to pull in a Pynt container, Docker container. You have to pull in the image and run the container locally. And you have to have API for your collection, a Postman API for your collection, and you have to have a functional collection already in place, which you should have created for your API endpoints, and then just run the Pynt collection. So if you run, if you see, this is how Pynt works. So usually, from Postman, you run your functional test, and it goes to target application. It does whatever it does and gives back you the response to you. But when you run Pynt, all the API requests are redirected to the Pynt Docker container which is running, and with this in return will send all the API requests to target application. And what it does is it analyzes the request being sent and the responses it gets back, and it analyzes all the set of requests to there and tries to find if there are any possible vulnerabilities with the responses it has got and the headers and whatever, right? What all data it can get, it's hands-on. It tries to analyze it, and it tries to form out a report wherein you'll be able to see the if there are any vulnerabilities in place for this. So this is how Pynt works right now. So I will show you a quick demo on how it can be done. So before that, does anyone have any questions? Do you want to answer? Okay, I will take that as a no, and I will move it with the demo right now. So first, before that, we need to pull the Pynt image. So like I will stop whatever is running for me, and I will pull a new image. So this official documentation for Pynt is available in their Postman collection. If you fork the collection, you'll be able to get their official documentation. And in that documentation, you will be able to see all the set of steps that are needed. So first is a Postman app, and second, you have to have Docker desktop or Docker engine running here, and your functional test. So the prerequisites are very less. So this is what it makes Pynt very interesting, because it's very lightweight and the prerequisites are very less as well. So the infrastructure are set up to run these tests it's very minimal. So I will go ahead and I will try to pull and run my Docker here. So my Docker container is up and running here, so I can just verify it. Yeah, it's running. Now I just need to, if you see, I have already forked the Pynt collection over here. So there are some variables that I need to connect. So I'm using 5002 as my port here. And you want the API key. The API key is just, it's not the credentials for your actual application or anything. It's just the API, the key that the Pynt collection can access, can use to access your other collections in your workspace. And you want to, specify the collection name that you want to run the security test against. So in this case, I have a collection called sample. which I know there are some vulnerabilities with this endpoint. So I'm just gonna run this collection. So it takes some time to run so it'll run all the endpoints from this collection, and it'll analyze and send back a report. So right now it is running all the endpoints from this collection. So it takes around 2 to 3 minutes. So when security testing is when we talk about security testing, running these test cases in such a short notice is very interesting thing. So as you see, the scan has been completed now, and it says there are some issues or some vulnerabilities that the scan has found. So if you go to there's a show report request in the collection. If you go to it and if you run the report, you will be able to see a report on whatever the endpoints it has found, some vulnerabilities, and if there are any warnings and whatever has passed. And you would be able to see a report on whatever the vulnerabilities it has found. So if you see here, the first is JWT has hashed without any secret. So like the JWT token has been implemented for this endpoint, but the secret has not been signed. So now it is running without a secret. So it is more vulnerable to any threat or vulnerability. And there are multiple cases it checks for. So if we look at it in a way, Pynt only checks for all the top 10 OWASP list. So when we talked about OWASP, right? So there are top 10 OWASP API security list, which has been published every 2 or 3 years. So Pynt checks for all these vulnerabilities here, and it will give you an report on if any one of the vulnerability has been found. So as you see, some of the things have been passed, some of the vulnerabilities are passed. So there are no SQL injections right now. So these vulnerabilities are passed, but the other things, whatever failed, you can get an idea on whatever it's failed, and at the last you will be seeing all the endpoints which in the collection, and you can also get a how much time it took to run all these endpoints. So this is like a summary, but at the top you could get a detailed report on whatever the issue, and there are some suggestions as well how to fix it. So this is an easy way to run your security testing in early early part of your process. Now if you see, there is another collection called request. So this has just one point, but just one endpoint. When you run this in your collection,
Prem, we have a question here from the audience. So question from Ankit. What type of security test cases does Pynt cover? Is it customizable?
So it covers all the OWASP published top 10 API security cases. So if we look at the OWASP project, there is an API top 10, and these API security top 10 vulnerabilities are being covered by Pynt as of now. And I think they are expanding their model to include other vulnerabilities as well. But as of now, all these top 10 vulnerabilities are being covered as part of the vulnerability scan. Okay.
I hope, Ankit, you got your answer.
So we have a different collection, but it just has one endpoint. So when you run this, what happens is that the test will run, but it will show in report that there's only one endpoint. So the results or scan might not be valid or that effective. So what it basically says is that the more number of test cases you have in your collection, the more effective the scan model will be. So if you have multiple cases to, in this scenario, I just have one user login collection. If you have invalid cases, if I have some edge cases also for, user login post call, then the scan will be more effective in that scenario. So if I see here in the runs, it has been completed, but it would say that there is some, if I run the report, there are only one warning and 5 errors. And okay, I think this is for the last one. Just a minute. So it has to have more number of function cases to be more effective. So that's how it's working right now. So if you have more function cases, it probably scans, checks for more vulnerabilities in each cases, and you'll be able to, if one of the if one test case, if the vulnerability is missed, and it will be able to find in other cases as well. Let's say there are 3 or 4 edge cases for one endpoint, and it will be able to catch it in there. So that's the basic idea behind Pynt as of now. And they have an GitHub Actions as well. You could run, this Pynt GitHub Actions here, and you'd be able to run it in your CI/CD pipelines against a configured collection, which all the test cases, and you would be able to get results more early in your development process, as we talked about earlier. So yeah, I guess so. When you look at Pynt as a whole, it is not an alternative for any existing DAS tools, maybe like IBM AppScan or PortSpeaker or whatever, right? But it is a lightweight tool that can be used by a QA or non-security testing engineer or a person to run their security test and try to identify any basic vulnerabilities as soon as possible and try to negotiate with it earlier. So that's the basic idea behind Pynt. It's no way an alternative for all the securities services that we have right now in place in the market, but it's getting started. It's a relatively new tool, and it's being more used in the market right now. So I guess you'd be, when you have your hands on it, you'll be able to learn more on, security and what are regarding owasp as well. So so these are the references for my session. It's basically owasp and Pynt's official documentation. So that's it. I can take any questions if there is any.
Yeah, Prem, that's a wonderful session. Do you have any questions? You can put the questions in the Q&A section and we can take up these questions to Prem.
Even the host can ask the question if they have any.
In the meantime, I'm sharing the feedback link. Kindly give the feedback for the entire session that we have. The feedback link is in the Zoom chat. Just click on that link and provide the feedback of the entire session. In the meantime, you can type the questions if you have for both the sessions.
We are asking a question. Do we have any alternative tool apart from Pynt that provides a similar API security testing?
there are tools which runs API security testing like Cynic, and even you can run your test using burp suite as well, but it doesn't have anything to integrate with Postman. So you have to set it up you have to write all the cases given from scratch. So with like easy integration with Postman, I think this is the only tool available right now.
Okay. Thank you, Prem. It was a nice session. I over it to Sabyachi to do the closing part. Yeah.
Hey, hi. Thanks everyone. Thanks Prem, thanks Prich, Sonal for the wonderful session we have. That's how vodka is. I mean, we hope that we have unfolded few chapters on the quality section, and feedback is matter for us. Do please provide the feedback. I provide that Shanthan has provided already the feedback form link to provide us feedback, and it's important us to what went well and what we need to improve in near future for the upcoming vodka session, so that we can provide you more unique testing chapters and areas on to provide to more sessions like this. And thank you for joining us. And we would like to appreciate each and everyone, every host over there, every organization, and our beloved Casey, Nalikant Mesla, who have created this webinar, Shantan, Nitya, Usha, who have helped us arranging this session, and you audience, you have without you, this session is nothing. So thanks everyone, and I would ask Shantan to post here is already the websites and everything is there, so you can check our vodka YouTube link as well. So this videos and everything recording will upload it there on YouTube channel. You can subscribe to get more information, and you can check out our vodka India websites. If you have any aspiration to give any talk in future, you can just sign up over there and we'll contact you. So thank you folks. Thank you for the session, and hope for a great weekend.
Thank you, folks. A special thank to speakers and attendees. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks, speaker Sonal.
Yeah.
So we're closing the recording of this session.
Yeah.